Welcome, everyone. In today's explainer, we're not just going to memorize vocabulary. We're going to treat these Chinese words for food like a series of keys. And each key, as we'll see, unlocks a little bit more of the history, the geography, and the fundamental logic of Chinese culture. Our goal here isn't just to learn words, it's to learn how to see the world through them.
So, this is the big question that's going to guide our discussion. It really changes our job from just being a vocabulary student to being something more like a cultural detective. Because in Mandarin, especially when you're talking about something as basic as food, every single character is like a little linguistic artifact. It's got a story, a history, and a logic just waiting for us to uncover it.
So here's our plan for today. We'll start by talking about looking beyond the word list, then we'll dive into the absolute foundation of a Chinese meal, grains. After that, we'll look at the centerpiece, main dishes, and finally we're going to tie it all together and talk about the bigger relationship between language, food, and culture, and really explore why this deep dive approach is so incredibly valuable.
All right, let's jump into our first section, the foundation, grains. You know, grains are so much more than just food. They are the bedrock of civilization. And in Mandarin, the words for China's two most important grains, that's rice and wheat, give us this amazing window into both the structure of the language and the very geography of the country.
We're going to start with what is arguably the most essential food concept in southern China, a staple that has shaped its society for thousands of years, mi fan. Now, on the surface, this just means cooked rice. But when we break it down, we're going to see a really fundamental principle of the language and the cuisine.
Okay, the logic here is absolutely key. This isn't just one word, it's two separate ideas working together. As you can see, mi is the raw, uncooked grain of rice itself. But fan, well, that's what happens after it's been transformed by cooking. In fact, fan is so central to the culture that its meaning actually expands to mean a meal in general. This is where we get a huge cultural insight. You'll often hear the greeting, 你吃饭了吗? Literally, that means, have you eaten rice? But what it really means is, have you eaten yet? That tells you everything you need to know about how rice is basically synonymous with the idea of a meal and a huge part of Chinese culture.
All right, let's really focus on pronunciation now, because this specific combination of tones is a classic stumbling block for students. The most common mistake is to say it with a flat English intonation, mi fan. That's just not going to be understood. The first character, mi, is a third tone. Your voice has to make this shape. It dips down and then comes back up. Listen closely. Mi, mi. The second character, fun, is a fourth tone. Think of it as a sharp, decisive drop, like you're giving a command. Listen, fun. Now, let's put them together slowly. Try it with me. Mi, fun. And now at a more natural speed. Mi, fun. Getting that vocal contour right is absolutely non-negotiable if you want to be clear. Excellent. Now let's shift our focus and head northward to the wheat-growing parts of China. Up there, the staple grain looks a little different. It comes in the form of miantiao, or as we know them, noodles.
What's so brilliant here is that this word follows the exact same transparent building block logic that we just saw with rice. Just look at the pieces. Mian refers to the base ingredient, flour or dough. Then the second character, tiao, is what we call a classifier or a measure word. It's used for things that are long, thin, and flexible, like a rope, a river, or, you guessed it, a noodle. So the Mandarin word for noodles is, quite literally, flour strips. It is a perfect, beautiful example of how descriptive and logical this language can be.
And once again, the tones are absolutely critical. Min is that same sharp, falling fourth tone we just practiced in fun, min. But qiao is a second tone, which means it rises. It should sound almost like you're asking a question. Tiao? So you have to avoid that flat min tiao. The correct way has this really dynamic movement. A sharp fall, followed by a clear rise. Mian, tiao, mian tiao. It's that contrast that makes it perfectly understandable.
So, to wrap up this section, mi fan and mian tiao are not just two things you can order from a menu. They're like linguistic maps. They reflect that huge agricultural and cultural divide in China, the rice growing south versus the wheat growing north. The language itself actually encodes this geographical reality by building the words from their physical parts. It's really fascinating. Okay, so now we're going to see how that same clear building block logic doesn't just apply to staples, but also to the main dishes, what we might call the centerpiece of the meal.
Let's start our look at main dishes with a very common protein, nioro, which, as you can see, translates to beef.
The logic here is just wonderfully straightforward. The first character, nio, means cow, And if you look at its ancient form, it was actually a little picture of a cow's head complete with horns. The second character, ro, simply means meat or flesh, so beef is literally cow meat. And this transparent pattern is such a gift when you're learning the language because it's so consistent. Pig meat or pork is zhu-ro. Chicken meat is ji-ro. It's also worth noting from a cultural standpoint that cattle were historically draft animals for farming, which actually made beef much rarer and more of a luxury than pork in many parts of traditional China.
Now, pronouncing nioro brings up two common issues. First, the tones. It's a rising second tone on nio and then a falling fourth tone on ro. Niu, ro. The second challenge, and this one's a bit tougher for English speakers, is that initial sound in ro. It is not the English R. To make this sound correctly, your tongue needs to be flatter and further back in your mouth. It's almost like the position you'd be in to start the J sound in a word like leisure. Just listen to the difference. Ro, that's English, versus ro, that's Mandarin. Now let's put it all together correctly. Nioro.
Of course, you can't have a complete meal without vegetables. The general word for this whole category of food is shu cai. Shu cai.
This word needs a little more unpacking. While the two characters together, shu cai, specifically mean vegetables, that second character, cai, is much more flexible. And this is a really critical point. By itself, cai can mean vegetable, sure, but it can also mean a prepared dish that you order, or even an entire regional cuisine. For example, if you want to talk about Sichuan food, you say Sichuan cai. Understanding that flexibility is absolutely essential for being able to read a menu or just talk about food in a Chinese-speaking place.
Okay, for pronunciation, the first thing we have to get right is that initial sound. It's a clear sh sound, not an S. To make it, you need to curl the tip of your tongue up slightly. Shu, and it's a high, flat first tone. It doesn't go up or down. Shu. Then we have gai, which is that sharp falling fourth tone again. Gai. So it's not su-kai. It's a high, level tone followed by a quick drop. Shu, gai, shu kai.
So this really detailed breakdown of just 4 words brings us to a much bigger question. What's the point of dissecting them so much? And I hope the answer is starting to become clear. We haven't just been learning vocabulary. We've been learning a new way to think and a new way to see the logic that's built right into the language itself.
And this right here is the payoff. When you understand that miantiao literally means flour strips, you're not just memorizing, you're understanding. And that shows respect. It gives you something really interesting to talk about with native speakers, which helps you build a genuine connection. It helps you avoid misunderstandings, and maybe most importantly, it makes the words stick in your brain, because they're not just random sounds anymore, they're logical constructions. This is the difference between being a tourist with a phrasebook and being a truly engaged, respectful learner of a culture.
So I really want to leave you with this final thought. Don't just learn words. Take them apart. Ask questions about them. Look for the story that's hidden inside. Every single character is like a little window into a different way of seeing the world. And the real question is, what are you going to choose to see when you look through the next one?